Hi everybody, good evening. Welcome to the webinar, June 27th, 2016. I think tonight's webinar is kind of fun, and I think it's a very simple idea to give us an idea about what therapy can do for us, how it can be helpful. And so it might be a little bit of a shorter one, but it's a fun principle. This was one specifically requested from our therapist because this is something they use with the clients, the students in the field. And again, like I said, it's a fun, simple concept, and I'll try to add some things onto it besides just the simple model of Johari's window. Johari's window was developed by Joseph Luft and Harrington Ingham, and basically it's just this model about understanding the four different windows of ourselves. There's a part that we know about ourselves that everybody else knows, right? You all know that I'm male, that I have blue eyes. We both know that. There are certain adjectives that we would all agree on. Then there's the things that are known to me but not known to others. That's the hidden window. Those are the things that I know about myself that you all don't know about me. Then there's the unknown, or excuse me, the blind, which is not known to self but known to others. So something you can see about me that I can't see about myself. And then lastly, there's something that we both don't know about me. So part of the idea in therapy is to expand the window of the areas that we know to ourselves, and then to make self-disclosures that we feel comfortable with and letting other people into our lives. And so we're trying to shrink that part that we don't know about ourselves. And they have this simple exercise. What they do is they take these 57 adjectives, right? And you can do it in a group of people. And you pick the ones that you think describe you, and others pick the one, they write down the ones that they think describe you, right? And then you decide where they go to in the box. And the ones that aren't selected are either not true about you or not in anybody's awareness about you. And I'll describe these and then we'll talk about how it can be useful and how it really is a template for what we're doing in therapy. In the open arena, adjectives that are selected by both the participant and his or her peers are placed onto the open or arena quadrant. This quadrant represents traits of the subject that both they themselves and their peers are aware of. The hidden or facade, adjectives selected only by subjects but not by any of their peers are placed in the hidden or facade quadrant, representing information about them that peers are unaware of. It is then up to the subject to disclose this information or not. The blind section, adjectives that are not selected by subjects but only by their peers are placed into the blind spot quadrant. This represents information that the subject is not aware of but others are, and they can decide whether and how to inform the individual about these blind spots. So much of what we do is peer-driven at Evoke, and so this is that part where people give feedback. And the amazing thing that I see students and clients, participants go through in this process, it's really powerful actually, is in the beginning of the program, most clients, most participants are defensive about the feedback that they get, right? They hear other people get it and they want to argue with it, they want to defend it, they want to debate it, right? Or they get reactive to it. What we see as clients move through this process, it happens usually around week 4 or 5, is they begin to adopt a mantra that many of the groups talk about, which is, if it fits, let it sit. If it doesn't apply, let it fly. So it doesn't necessarily have to be true about them, but it's something that they can consider, something that they can be curious about in the process. I've told the story many times of a former client of mine where I was involved in an intervention years later to get him into residential treatment. And when they brought me in and placed me in the circle and he walked into the room not knowing that we were all going to be there, he was very upset, and then he saw me. And then he remembered his experience. Something tapped into him, and so he sat down in the circle instead of storming out the door. And then when his parents started to read him a version of the impact letter, why they were asking him, because he was an adult now, to go to treatment, he stood up immediately and said, I don't want to hear this BS. I've heard it before. I'm tired of hearing it. And then I turned to him and I said, just simply, remember when you were with us in the wilderness, in the first couple of weeks you couldn't stand feedback, and then after a while you realized that it didn't have to be true about you, you could just hear it? Do you think you could practice that right now? And he sat down. And he listened to all the letters from his family, and he ended up later on that day choosing to go to treatment. So we can start to learn through this process that other people's ideas, other people's feedback, we're not paralyzed by them, we're not triggered by them. We get curious about them. We look at ourselves. They can inform us. They're not necessarily true about us, but it's something that we can begin to ask ourselves questions. I think that's what therapy can do. That's what peer feedback can do. A lot of people will describe it as holding a mirror up. That's part of what I try to do with the clients that I work with, both the parents and the children, to say, I have this thought, I have this idea, I want to put out there. See what you think, see if it fits for you. So we decrease our blind areas. And then the unknown quadrant are adjectives that were not selected by either subjects or the peers and remain in the unknown quadrant, representing the participants' behaviors or motives that were not recognized by anyone participating. This may be because they do not apply, because there is a collective ignorance of the existence of these traits. Right? So again, those are things that we can look at and consider, but definitely don't have to try on. So that's what we do with this. And the goal in therapy, like I said, is to increase the areas of ourselves that we're aware of, and then to make choices about whether we disclose. And for those around us, how do we decrease somebody's blind area? And it says in the instructions I just read to you that we become selective and intentional. I think a lot of times as parents or family members, we kind of want to punch the other person in the nose with the information, with the feedback, instead of giving it in a compassionate and patient way, giving it when it's asked. Sometimes with our family, the best way to increase that is to not give the feedback, is just to be patient with them and be loving and kind and compassionate. When we do that, they will more courageously or more honestly look at themselves. And the reason that they're willing to be more honest is because they feel that lack of judgment. So being selective and figuring out how we can offer the idea, that's one of the reasons why I like to give feedback by the I have a fantasy, or I have an idea, or I have a thought, or this is what I'm hearing. When I use those types of phrases with people, I'm giving them permission to reject them. And if they tell me that's a ridiculous idea, then my response is it maybe was. So we can just move on. I don't get invested in getting them to get it. Especially when that feedback is surrounding a wound, right? A vulnerability. As a therapist, one of the things that I try to both do as a therapist and also model and mentor other people to do is to honor the defense, to honor the symptom, if you will. And to say that symptom that you have is off-putting as it is, somehow protects you, somehow protects a wound. And if I can honor it, if I first have an attitude without judgment, and I can recognize that there's some value, some purpose in that you came by honestly, then that lack of shame, that lack of judgment will oftentimes encourage somebody to share, somebody to look at it, somebody to be able to see it in themselves. And so being selective about it is important. I want to talk about insight versus change. And this is similar to, and really does take off from last week's webinar on manipulation. Because I think a lot of us get seduced by insight. I know I do. And a lot of parents pay a lot of attention to that, right? They're looking for insight in the letters and in the conversations. One of the things I like to ask parents to be aware of is what fools you? What are you seduced by? Right? Are you seduced by somebody cooperating? Are you seduced by somebody having wonderful, insightful, articulate ideas and thoughts and aha epiphanies? Right? What are you vulnerable to in terms of what's most likely to manipulate you, to cause you maybe not to see the whole picture, or to not remain in a healthy, detached relationship with the other person and their behaviors? So, and some people they're seduced by an apology. Apologies, for me, are almost not important in this work at all, because more than anything, I want the person who I'm treating to see how they've hurt themselves, and for that they don't need to apologize. And if I'm doing my work well, I'm grounded and I'm full, I'm taking care of myself, I'm going to be not very offended by the things that they do to me, because I won't see them as about me. I'll see them as a hurt person. So that's another thing that I can follow, another instinct that I can pay attention to. If I'm getting offended or hurt by something, I might be lacking some self-care at the time. So do you get pulled into by a negotiation, by a promise, by your own shame, right? That you're a bad parent, that you're not being fair, that your child feels unloved or unmotivated. A lot of parents feel that they, for example, have to have an obligation to give their child the benefit of the doubt for some reason, even when the child has given them plenty of reason not to, because the parent is at times taking on the child's esteem, right? I don't want to crush them. I don't want them to feel bad about themselves. Instead of just having a position with the child and saying, here's how I feel, here's my experience, it's mine, I own it, but I'm going to hold on to it. Right? I'm going to feel this way. And I'm going to respond to you from this place. And I'm going to go to a therapist, go to a mentor, go to a sponsor. I'm going to work out my issues so I can get as clear. I can continue to work on getting as clear as I can. I've talked about this idea about a friend that I had that would always say to me, I know what my issues are. Why do I need to go to therapy? And this individual was a therapist. And my response was, it's not about knowing the issues. That's not what therapy is. Therapy is a healing experience. Therapy is rewiring, really, our brain, our fight and flight, our prefrontal cortex. And that doesn't come with simple information. Information can augment it, can help it, can anchor it, can create a template for us going forward, but information in and of itself doesn't change us necessarily. It's a small part of it. But having a new experience changes us. And that's why I always talk with parents about slow it down. The positives you're hearing from your child, about your child, aren't probably that positive, and the negatives aren't that negative. So take a step back and just watch. Take a we'll see attitude. Oftentimes it can become very intellectualized. I was listening to the Dalai Lama speak last week at the University of Utah. And I walked away and I thought nothing that he told me, and I was talking to a friend who saw it, was unique, was new information. There was no new twist, no new angle. He was talking about compassion and global accountability. But the sense I had from the Dalai Lama, over say for myself, is he's living it better than I am. And I could feel that. I could feel that in relationship to the speakers, to the audience, to how he didn't take himself very seriously. I could just feel that response. He took some questions from the audience too, and his compassion was overflowing toward everybody, toward himself. So knowing your issues and having an intellectual understanding isn't the thing. And I think parents, sometimes we want that to be the thing. We want to teach our child something or get something in their head, because we believe if we do, then they're changed. And it's usually, the barrier is not an intellectual one. The barrier is not a data problem. The barrier is something in the personality, some wounds, some injury, some protection, right? And it's amazing when people have these moments where they begin to open up, all of a sudden all the lessons make sense to them, right? You don't have to teach them very much. The lessons come to them very, very easily. Part of it is about surrendering. Right? Letting go of control. A lot of people spend a lot of time trying to control other people. Clients try to control us and what we think about them. And that's why I often say, if you're less apt to react or respond to your child's reports or letters, you're setting yourself up in a healthier place and a healthier relationship to them, and they will then have to find themselves. Because if they're not measuring themselves by your reaction, good or bad, that process asks of them to have greater awareness. We do, of course, provide aha experiences, but a lot of those are through the experience itself. It's not through the words. I cannot tell you how often, it was almost every time, with my more than 1,000 clients that I saw, where my students would say to me, gosh, the first few weeks, I didn't get it at all. I didn't know what you were talking about, and I didn't like you. And I thought you were being evasive. They didn't use that word. But now I get it. And it's weird. I would say that to parents sometimes, just to make it simple after a while. He doesn't really get it yet. I had a client talk to me recently and say that he realized he was an addict. But that didn't mean anything, because he didn't take with it all the implications, right? He didn't take the humility, the vulnerability, the concern, the challenge of it. He just knew the right thing to say. I had a client years ago who had been through 12-step programs and came to me and said, I recognize that I'm an addict, I'm working the steps. And I would say to him all the time, in our interactions, I don't see it. Sometimes I think about that in terms of religion. It's like when somebody tells me they're religious, sometimes I don't see the religion, right? I don't see the patience, the compassion, all of that stuff that I know that religion encourages and teaches. So learning to see it, learning to understand it, and that comes from a place of, if I'm going to show up in your life in an authentic way, I'm not going to try to control what you think. I'm not going to try to spin or manage my image in your eyes. I'm just going to tell you the truth. I'm going to be kind and nice and pleasant and honest, and authentic, but I'm going to let you have your opinions about me because they're really none of my business. So it's a strange thing because we spend so much time giving our clients feedback, you giving them feedback, us giving them feedback, and then we're saying in another sense, but that's just to inform you. It's important for you to figure out how you're doing for you, not because of what we say. And so there's an interesting juxtaposition there. But surrender is a huge part. And by the way, surrender is a lot like being empowered. Surrender is focusing on what you can control and letting go of what you can't control, which is everybody else. Right? That's what surrender essentially is. Surrender has a teachability in it also. The idea that I don't have it all the answers and it all figured out. So we provide aha experiences. I have this quote, pain is the only currency accepted for wisdom, right? Really what we're teaching all of our clients to do, parents alike, children, is teaching them how to feel those undesired feelings, giving those feelings a place, a stage to be on, so that they don't come out sideways, that they don't leak their feelings, and really learning to value pain and difficulty and struggle and challenge and sadness, value all of that. I think so much of our Western culture is we want to anesthetize ourselves. We want to block it. We want to numb ourselves out. We want to distract ourselves. But really what therapy does and what mindfulness does is it asks us to feel our feelings, to be present with them, to sit with them, and to see the value in them. Because it's part of having a whole life. It's also, our pain is our joy unmasked, right? It's what is on the other side of love and joy. So you can't have one without the other. When we give you the weekly updates, when the therapists give you the weekly updates, a lot of it is we're describing a model, and not all of it is conscious. Not all of it is said as articulately to the student as we're telling you, because again, that would be to intellectualize it. But we're giving it an anchor. We're giving it a framework, right? We'll often describe what your child's doing this work and what we see. And we give some of that feedback to them, of course, but not all of it. Because we want them to come to it themselves. We want them to see. It's important that we ask more questions sometimes than giving answers. So we're also trying to give you some distance. If we can give you a framework, if we can tell the story of your child in a way that makes sense, in a way that asks you to do certain things and to not do other things, that makes sense to you, then you know how to react. And so much, as we all know, of parental anxiety and discontent, so much of it, not all of it, but so much of it is about the not knowing what to do. Not just about the pain and the difficulty of it, that's part of it too, but it's about the not being sure and not knowing what to do. So if we can tell a story, give you a theory, give you a context, give you a frame and understand your child, and that frame asks you to write certain things in your letters and asks you not to say certain things in the letters, like rescuing and enabling, asks you to hear them, asks you to be patient, to move slowly, all those things, then we give you a sense of confidence and contentment in the process. Parents often ask this question, is it true or internalized? Are they being honest? Neither of these are really the important question, right? And I say this all the time, but we can all relate to having an emotional response to something, but not being able yet to carry that through, right? I think all of us have probably battled with some vice in our life. Think of whether it's smoking cigarettes or food or whatever it is. And all of us can relate to that moment when we've had too much and we don't want to do it and we feel genuine, but then later on in a moment of weakness, we go back on our goals, on our resolutions, right? We skip the exercise day or whatever it is. So it's not simply about being honest. It's not simply about knowing it. It's about having it be a part of you, having it be something that gives the idea, gives the new behavior legs. And time, there's no substitute for time. Right? There's no substitute for playing it out, practicing it out. It's related to the principle that I talk about where if your child can handle a yes, if they can handle all the responsibilities that come with a yes, then they can handle a no. They can deal with a no, with a boundary. If they're that mature that they can handle what they're asking for, then they can also deal with a no. And I think that's pretty important. That's helpful for parents to see and recognize. What we learn to do as parents is we learn to show up as an adult and see the child versus seeing yourself in the child. We see their reactions and their upsetness as them, right? Instead of like some parents talk to me about, some parents are raising their own wounded child, all the things that the child didn't get that they wanted, they felt hurt by and aren't healed yet with. And so what do? They try to correct that in their child. That's not seeing the child. That's projecting onto the child your own stuff. And what your children need, what our children need, is for us to know we have wounds, we have issues, we have problems in our relationship with ourselves, problems in our relationship with them, and we're going to work on it. And we can go back to that. And we're going to make mistakes sometimes and say we're sorry. And we're not going to do it perfectly, and we're going to say we're sorry. We're going to own our piece of it. And we're not going to be held hostage by our fear that if I'm accountable and I'm sorry, then I'm not going to get you to do what I want, right? That's control. One of the reasons why we're afraid to be accountable is because we think the child is going to use that for an excuse. Guess what? That's not inside of your control. That's not your business. And they won't use it against you if it doesn't get used against you, if it doesn't matter. If I came to you and said, own my piece in a relationship, and then you got very angry at me and started blaming me for a bunch of stuff, if I didn't feel guilty about it, if I didn't have shame about it, it wouldn't matter to me. And you'd eventually stop saying it because it's not working. So learning to show up as an adult. The trick is to be accountable for your choices, not their choices, right? That's the trick. In a simple way, that's a magic little idea. I want to use this model also from Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell drew this simple drawing, and he said he was going to borrow from Plato's idea that the soul will be represented by a circle. And the line in the middle of it is the line between the conscious and the unconscious. The ego is so the top half or about 40% of the circle, that's the conscious mind. And the square in the middle of it is the ego. And the circle is the center of the self. The center of who we really are, which is in our unconscious. There's so much more unconscious going on with all of us than there is consciously. And we think that square is who we are, and it's not. So the work of therapy, right? Just making that shift, really living that shift with yourself, and what that feels like to your child and to your loved ones when you say, I'm a project. My life is a project still. I have issues and they come out. And when I get upset, that's about me. And when I get reactive, it's about me. How you trigger me is related to that, but it's not the thing, right? When we own our lives, when we own ourselves, when we own this project that is our lives, our loved ones experience something radically different from what most people experience from family members, where everything's about blame and finger pointing and not being responsible, not owning oneself, not owning one's own life, not making one's life a project. So the Johari's window, the illustration by Joseph Campbell, is to try to lower that line, right? Decrease the blindness. Alice Miller says in her book, The Drama of the Gifted Child, that there's only one enduring weapon in our fight against mental illness, and that is the discovery of our unique childhood. Right? That's the work, and it's going to take work. It's not going to come easy. I was talking to somebody today about this idea, about this road less traveled that many of our parents take, many of our staff, many of our clients, many of our participants take. This road less traveled of personal discovery, of awareness, is the road less traveled. Right? Not many people do. It's hard work. It's painful. It's scary. It's uncomfortable. We have to learn new things. We have to consider the possibility that we don't know everything. We don't have everything figured out, and that's scary for us. That feels like a lack of control. And then I said, but the only thing worse than actually traveling the road less traveled is not doing it. Because then you are really a victim to your impulses, to your emotions. Your choices aren't conscious and intentional. You don't know where they're coming, all that stuff. That's the only thing worse than doing the work. I want to talk about the cycle of violence because I think there's a lesson from this here that a lot of people look at in therapy. In the cycle of violence, this is a very common cycle that we use to describe violent offenders, domestic violent offenders, and the pattern that they go through. We talk about the tension building phase, right? The violence, and then the honeymoon. The violent is the violent act, and then the honeymoon is flowers, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again, promises, all those things. The problem is for this cycle is that after the honeymoon, the individual who's saying them they're sorry, the husband, the man, the boyfriend, typically, not always, is saying sorry over and over again. They're saying it and they don't have an outlet for their frustration. They don't know how to deal with their frustration. They don't know how to deal with conflict. And they're so afraid that their anger is going to lead to a violent episode that they push it down, repress it, right? But what happens when you press down all that emotion? It becomes this powder keg, right? That the smallest spark can explode again. Then you act out violently, and then you feel bad again. So what we learn from the cycle of violence, and we see this in our program, I've seen it for 20 years, more than 20 years now, is that our clients come into this process and they're saying they're sorry, or they're promising they won't do it again, or they tell us that they're fixed right away. But they don't understand that they have to find an outlet. They have to discover. That's why I always say the impact letter that children write to their parents oftentimes is a more valuable tool for me to gauge their progress than the letter of accountability that they write. See, the letter of accountability, anybody can fake. But a healthy, assertive, articulate, still accountable for one's own choice, impact letter to your parents, that's powerful. And another thing that it tells me is it tells me if the parents are in a place, have enough ego strength to hear it. And to not have to make it about right and wrong and details, but just to say, this is important. I want you to keep talking about this. Thank you for writing it. You've got to figure out a way to get this out. So we've got to get out of this. This is kind of a simplified version of my shame cycle that I wrote about. We've got to get out of it. We've got to find something different. We've got to find a way to talk about our feelings, our hurt, our pain. We've got to find safe people who can listen to them. Ideally, family members can learn to listen to them. It is my work to do better and better at learning to listen to my children. So let's talk a minute about behavior change, right? Talking about insight and awareness, and talk about how that intersects or relates to behavior change. We know that logical, natural consequences are a part of change. It's okay to have them. Sometimes I think parents spend too much time talking to their children, and it's okay to have consequences that aren't reactive and aren't punitive, but that are natural and logical. If something is dirty, we learn not to clean it up for them, right? If they make a mess, they clean it up. Those types of things. If they come home late, they don't get to go out the next night as a part of that logical consequence, right? Having it be related. We want to make it as short and simple and immediate as possible, meaning it doesn't necessarily need to be an explosion, an atom bomb, but have a short time. We know that behavioral change is more likely to change if the consequence is closely related to, in time, to the action. How do communication skills fit into this? We need to be very careful. It's important to be very careful that we don't use our feelings to try to change our children. I'll tell you this, and I can't overstate this. I can't overstate this next comment. I used to say this for years. Haven't said it as much lately. But if there's one mistake that most human beings make in relationships, it's the belief that if I tell you my feelings, you have to change to make me feel differently. I'm telling you that I'm sad, afraid, worried, anxious, hurt, whatever it is, so that you will stop doing what you're doing so I don't feel those things, right? And in fact, so many people that I work with, when I tell them that ideally we don't use our feelings to try to change other people, their response is, why do we share feelings then? Literally, most of my families, most of my parents in parenting classes that I teach ask that question. Why share feelings? And there's some good answers for that. It's about self-awareness. It's about learning to let go. It's about setting a context sometimes for the behavior. Like, this is where it's coming from. I'm afraid for your safety, so I'm going to make this decision. It's giving it some context. But if we use it to try to control the other person, coerce the other person, make the other person responsible for our feelings. And this is such a common sin, if you will, of modern parents who see themselves to be enlightened, right? But it is absolutely contrary to what we would encourage you to do. Set simple, clear boundaries, consequences, and own your own feelings and share them with the intent to let them go, to give it a context, and to develop greater self-awareness. And opportunities for connection, right? Doesn't guarantee that you'll be connected to or heard, but opportunities for connection so people can see you. And then, of course, watch out for those things developing into shame and then repeating that cycle of violence idea. Sometimes, as parents, I even think that evoke in a way, for a lot of families, it's a way to get out of the way, right? Sometimes the best person to teach my child a lesson isn't me, right? I know that's true. I know that's true because of my triggers, my limitations, all of those things. And so we surround our children with mentors, right? We give them other opportunities to do that. And in a lot of ways, most of you came to the point where you said, this is too much, we can't do it. And you can't. You can't replicate a residential wilderness treatment staff. You just can't for a lot of reasons. And the funny thing I always say is, you could probably do it better in some ways for my children than I can. Right? So getting out of the way, getting some distance and healthy detachment. I think, I mentioned this earlier, the fact that the communication goes typically in letters in our program it's an unintentional genius intervention. Because when the child has to wait 4 or 5 days to get a response from a letter that he or she has sent to mother and dad, the parents, they really do have to look inside themselves more because they're not playing off of you. They're not getting an immediate response from you. So many participants early on in the program say, I'm going to save this till our phone call. And I say to them, and I say this to parents too, I promise you that by and large, you will never be clearer when you're in the presence of the other person in this relationship. You'll have the best chance at being clear at pausing, thinking, being intentional, writing it down, maybe even reading it out loud to yourself, maybe reading it to another person, getting some feedback from them. But so many times, people have this fantasy. But really, the reason they have this fantasy that they're going to be clear with the other is because their communication is mostly intended to control or manipulate the other person to think or feel something differently. That's why people are inclined to that. Because the goal of their communication is to change other people, not to communicate or connect. And parents, the same thing. They'll get very clear on a phone call or in a family session, a parenting session, and then they'll get on the phone with their child or walk into the room with their child and it's gone. And the same thing happens for children. So developing enough detachment that we can see the other person is important and really connect to them. Learning to feel unpleasant feelings. Sometimes it's the empathic misery, I call it, that we're resistant to, like our difficulty in feeling the pain when we watch our child struggle or suffer or make mistakes. Sometimes it's just learning to feel our own feelings. So much of parenting and the choices that we make could be reduced to us searching for any port in the storm, right? That's what I think about sometimes. Some of my bad parenting decisions are made when I just want an immediate relief from a situation. So I don't look at the big picture, right? I just look at the immediate situation. So learning to feel. Sometimes for clients it's about learning to comply, and sometimes it's about learning not to comply, right? And I think even for some people, both those things can be a part of their progress, right? You want your clients to find themselves, to find and draw their circle, using the circle analogy I often use, the 3 circles. So we want our clients to find that. And that's more important than checking off the boxes and following my lead or the staff's lead, right? And so sometimes it's about one and sometimes it's about the other, even with parents. Meaning that for you all to find yourselves and for you all to honor that the child's got to bump around and bump up against the walls and hit their nose on it and turn around and figure it out. So the take-home message, what fools you? I talked about this the other day with the manipulation list. Write a list and give it to your child. These are the things that I'm most seduced by, most intoxicated by, most fooled by in parenting. Just name it. Naming it takes away some of its power. The unspoken trigger is more powerful than the spoken trigger. Learning to value the other as an other, not an extension of you, not a projection of you, not your own little child. Right? Not giving them what you didn't get, but giving them what they need, and that's a different task. So learning to value the other. You'll know when you've changed when you can adopt the we'll see attitude. So many parents want to overpraise, want to overcorrect, get so caught up in the feedback, and then for now, we'll do some of the heavy lifting, and others can do the heavy lifting later on. But slow down. I would encourage you, hope that you could learn to be less impressed by the successes and less disappointed by the struggles and failures, so that the child figures themselves out, because that's more important than getting it right. That's a enduring change. That's developing a sense of self. Watch out for the flight to health. That's the I'm cured, I'm fixed. When clients, participants evolve farther in the program, they stop telling their parents about all the good things and all the wonderful insights that they have. And they start talking about their struggles. Right? I have this chronic struggle. I'm still struggling with so-and-so. Because they're not trying to sell you on something. And slowing down. Slow down your decisions, slow down your reactions, even slow down your opinions, ideally. And learn to be curious. Learn to respond with curiosity instead of with an opinion about you. Because sometimes the best thing that could happen for your child is for them to run into a wall. Right? Sometimes a failure is more important of a teacher than is a success. Sit on your own couch. It's just my way of saying go to therapy. Go to your own therapy. And understand your emotional reactions. Understand your issues. Be able to share with your child your unresolved issues. Again, when we can share with our children what we don't have figured out, where we're still struggling, where we're still getting tripped up and still stuck, when we can honestly and authentically share that with them, it takes the pressure off of them. They're not the only identified patient in the family. And they'll start to access wisdom, right? Instead of giving them a lecture about peer pressure, talk about how you worry about other people judging you. And I think most people can get in touch with that. And then be your own project. Make your life your project so your child is not tempted to take it on as their project. Be skeptical. I talked about that. Don't be obligated to trust. Ask yourself, why do I think I have to trust them? What am I trying to control in them? What am I taking responsibility for that's not mine in doing that? Realize that true changes take a long time. You know, what I realized years ago in my own therapy is that the therapy, and I love therapy. I love being a therapist. I love going to therapy. But the hard work is the rubber meeting the road work is the telling the truth in relationships, being authentic, setting a boundary, practicing healthy self-care, learning to listen to other people and hold their emotions without reacting or having an unhealthy reaction to it. And so the real work happens in between the sessions, right? In a way, the therapy sessions are the easiest part of our program. It's the stuff in between that's where we ask for the change. Insight is a part of the change, but it's not the only part of the change. And so the more your child is selling you on insight, the more that they need to learn to value the slower change, the behavioral change. Part of what Evoke provides for a lot of you is it provides some safety, of course. There's some lessons there, but it also provides an opportunity to mature, right? And we really do accelerate maturation by having such a comprehensive, experiential, immersive program. That's really what we're doing. We're getting 6 months worth of work out of 6 weeks. Learning as parents to value the mistakes and the struggles, right? Learning to see the value. So when the child makes a mistake, when they regress, when they backslide, we can pause and say, what's that going to be like? I'm curious, what's that like for you? My son is at week 4 at Evoke. He left once and headed to Las Vegas airport, but had no money or way to get back to Ohio, so he went back to Evoke. In talking with his counselor, I realized he is disengaged, not writing to us, although we have continued to write weekly. I love the philosophy of your program, but communication between us and him, as well as him and staff, is minimal. Can you comment on the situation, patience? When I would get a case like this, and 4 weeks is still relatively early for this process. I'm not surprised at week 4, but I would oftentimes have the parents write a letter where they say, we're letting go. A very short letter saying, we're just going to wait. I think we've been holding on tightly to your progress, your engagement. We've been invested. We've been wanting you to get engaged, and we realize you might never engage, so we're going to do things differently. So in a way, you say, in a way, you take the spotlight off of his engagement or lack thereof, and you say, we're letting go. This is reminding us that we can't control you, that we can't make it happen. Sometimes the parents don't write. Sometimes, in very significant cases, when this goes on a lot longer than this, I have parents write the other students in the group, and vice versa. Right? If it's severe. But in my most severe cases of this kind of response, when I've asked parents to disengage and to tell the child through letter that they're disengaging and they're going to focus on their change, not his change, I've wanted to say that applies to all families, right? I want all families to do that. I want all parents to say, I'm going to focus on me and my change, and I'm going to acknowledge, recognize, and name the fact that I can't get you to change, and I'm going to have to let that go. So it's patience on steroids, if you will, right? And if we do that change, we take the pressure off of them, and then he doesn't have a. See, your son has a couple of reasons not to engage. One is to not be controlled by you, to get into the power struggle with you, to demonstrate that he can't be controlled, that he's his own person. So if you take away your emphasis, your need, your want for him to change, it doesn't have that utility anymore. And by the way, this is the most important thing. The most you can do, all of you can do to encourage your children to change is to let go. To become less invested in their change and more invested in your own change and your own process. Including your need, want, attempts to control their behavior and their inside. So, in a way, this is, I wouldn't say it this way because it could be discounting to the feelings and the frustration and the fear you have, but in a way, this is a gift for you. And this gift is allowing you to realize you can only control yourself, and that itself is very, very hard. Any other questions, Stephanie? All right, I'll click through some upcoming slides, announcements. I have a couple of new things on here. The Cascade Parent Workshop this weekend went wonderful. In fact, there are, I think they said 21 people in the field today in the Cascade. So you can combine your workshop experience with a field visit if it lines up correctly. The next one will be in July 16th and 17th. We'd like all parents, if possible at all, to come to those, talk to your therapist if that timing can coincide with a field visit. We have the Finding You in July is closed. I'll put up the Cascades Parent Workshop as soon as I get it. Heroic Journeys is multi-families, August 10th through 13th. Finding You in September and October. We also have private intensives, so these can be families or individuals. 12-step support groups. We want all parents to go to 6 of these while their child is with us. And if you haven't gone yet, start now, start right away. Go to 6 of these meetings while your children are with us. That's what our request. And if your child has graduated from the program and you didn't go to them, it's not too late. They're free. Nothing in this world of therapy is free, so take advantage of that. Upcoming Northern California, New York City, and Chicago. I'll pin down the date in LA, but I think I'm going to do August 7th. I'm going to try a Sunday. We've been having a challenge with people and traveling on weeknights in Los Angeles. I'm from Los Angeles, so I understand it. But we've been having problems with people traveling. A lot of people RSVPing and few people showing up because I think they get to the night and they look out at the traffic and they don't come. So we're going to do it on a Sunday. And then I'm going to try to book it by Wednesday, the week of the 24th for Toronto. If there aren't any Canadians, Torontoites on the webinar, you can let me know if a weekday or a weekend would be better. Follow us on social media for announcements. You can follow the development of our Play Wilderness that's coming and that's opening up in October. I got 9 of you that wrote to me that wanted to have information. If you have Twitter, Facebook, you can see the announcements there. You can also go, if you're on Facebook, go to On Guard Arts and like their Wilderness Therapy or Wilderness Play page and keep updated there. Something else I was going to say. Oh, I also have a class tomorrow I'm teaching in Orem, Utah. So if anybody is local, I'm going to be teaching a heroic parenting series, and that's going to be taped. I'll give you that announcement about where that'll be later. Our Pursuits trip's upcoming. I accidentally put the wrong slide up here. Look on our website for upcoming scheduled trips. These can be private family, fun activities, high adventure with light therapy, or just good sober fun for young adults. The book is available on paperback, audio. Go to the Alumni Foundation book page to donate to charity when you buy a book. Any other live questions before I close? Stephanie? Like the earlier question from the parent of son from Evoke going to Las Vegas, our son is not making the change either at his step down program from RTC. Do you suggest the same? Let it go and back out? By letting it go, I'm not saying you take away the consequence of the boundary. I'm just saying you emotionally uninvest. Like I can have a boundary and say, here's my boundary. The boundary's there. But I'm not going to get caught emotionally. I'm not even going to put my energy, psychological, emotional energy in your change. And I realize as a codependent, weak codependents, that that's what we tend to do. So the backing off is not a change in behavior or boundary. It's just an emotional refocus, right? And that's our goal. My goal is to not be obsessed with or focused on or vigilant about your change and what you do, but just to simply, here's my boundary, this is what I can and can't support, this is what I'm comfortable with, but I can't control you. And learning how to live that. If you don't know what that looks like, go to an Al-Anon meeting or a Codependence Anonymous meeting where there are people that are experienced, and you'll begin to hear people talk about their relationships with people in their lives that are addicted or other negative behaviors, mental health issues, and you'll learn to hear. You'll learn from them and you'll hear from them what it's like to be in a healthy relationship with somebody with a struggle. And they're very assertive and they're very clear about their boundaries, but emotionally, they're learning detachment. Anything else? Our son's work in the wilderness does not include electronic devices, yet his life at home is very involved with the cell phone and video games. He seemed to focus intently on these. How does he learn boundaries on these devices? You know, the great thing about wilderness is we get a lot of great change started. The hard thing about wilderness is that it's a small box. So to translate the change from here to there, and there's lots of people that have lots of triggers that aren't available to them in wilderness. It's going to take a transitional program. That's some kind of transitional support, whether it be aftercare or therapy at home, something around that, so you can take that. You know, this is like spring training, right? This is like in baseball. Everybody's practicing, everybody's getting ready, everybody's getting into shape. But the real game is something different, and so there's going to be challenges. And so you learning your boundaries around that stuff, you learning to be clear about what you can and can't support and how you're going to respond. I say this facetiously a little bit, but I say this to the students out in the field. I want everybody, every parent and every participant in our program to assume that nobody else in the family is going to change. Right? Assume that your children are not going to change at all. Believe me, it'll be a very easy adjustment when you see the change they've made. But assume that they're not going to change at all. Then what are you going to do? What are you going to acquire? What are you going to develop during this time that you have to learn to respond to them? So, you know, you take those boundaries. You take what he's learning is he's learning how to feel. He's learning how to do on things that are uncomfortable. He's learning other ways to self-regulate, self-manage, to feel. That's what he's learning. And these devices, if they are a problem, then they are a distraction from feeling. They are a distraction from mindfulness. They're a distraction from discomfort and anxiety or whatever it is. So he's learning, he's developing, if you will, like cardiovascular, he's developing emotional strength, if you will. And he's also making some connections and having some insights and being able to see his triggers and preparing to come home and all that. But it's going to be hard because the box will get bigger later on. And like I've said all webinar long, focus on your change is the best thing that you can do. But yeah, he's getting stronger emotionally. That's what he's learning. He's learning that he has to feel. Even the ones that fight it and resist it get that out of the program. That's what I've seen. Right? Even the ones that are, and they're not a lot of them, but the ones that are super resistant, like maybe some of the ones that have been asked, questions have been asked about tonight, they do something really hard and uncomfortable, and that makes a difference in them. What is your experience of a child's reaction to parents sharing a list of what can manipulate them? I think they get a kick out of it, and they're entertained by it, and they realize that if a parent can see that in themselves, then they're a little bit less susceptible. They're a little bit less vulnerable. They recognize that it's losing some of its power. So sometimes it's fun for them to hear. Sometimes they'll add to it, and if they're serious about it, they'll acknowledge it. Sometimes they deny some of it because they don't want to be responsible for the other side of that equation. But ultimately, I think when parents can start to do that, they recognize great strength in the parents about being able to be honest with themselves. They also recognize that those things are going to be less effective than they used to be because the parent is starting to identify it. But I've seen it always have a positive effect on the relationship. I can't think of one time, and I've done this many, many times, where I saw that take away from the relationship. All right, folks. Thank you for all the questions. I didn't even think we were going to go the full time this time. I'll be back Wednesday night, this Wednesday, the 29th. I'm going to be reviewing the book Leadership and Self-Deception. It's a strange title, but it's a fantastic book about relationships, as is its prequel, The Anatomy of Peace, which I'll also do a webinar shortly after that. Have a great couple of days. I'll see you in 48 hours. Take care. Bye-bye.